This week on In Post, being selective about how and where you apply contrast in your landscape photos. Hi everybody, welcome back to In Post. My name is Scott Davenport, and this week we're processing a Vista landscape from Lagos, Portugal. For maximum enjoyment of this episode, you want to see some behind-the-scenes footage from the photo shoot itself. Check out the In the Field episode that I did earlier this week. That shows you what I saw when I was out there and some of the choices that went into the composition of this particular photo. Now, when I got into processing, very quickly contrast became an important part of getting this image to a state that I liked it. Now, rather than me blabbing about it and then showing it to you, I'm just going to show it to you. So let's dive right in and get going. Let's start in Lightroom, and here's the image straight out of the camera. You can see I'm using the before view, so the / key, so that there's no adjustments applied in the develop module. And so the first thing I did was lens corrections and spot healing. And so let's get that open here. And lens corrections, very basic, just clicking the profile corrections to add that on. For the spot healing, you can see that there's a bunch of these small white dots all over the place, where I chose to just use a single click spot healing to take care of a couple of dust spots up in the sky area here. And then because this was such a long exposure, there were some hot spots that I found in the sensor, and so just clicking a few places where I had some color noise that, cleaned that thing nicely. Things like the bulldozer or the ship on the horizon, I'm going to deal with those in On1. I like the On1 retouching tools better than I like Lightroom's spot healing tool. I just get more control from those. So for those items, and then there's some power lines and things in here that you can't even see zoomed out, but they are there. I'll use the On1 tools to address those. So that's spot healing. Now next was turning to the basic panel. And so first was dealing with white balance. And so grabbing the picker and using something in like this gray area here as a neutral gray. That might be a little bit too warm. Maybe cool that off some, because it was definitely blue in the morning. Something around there. I'll load the snapshot in a minute. Brought the exposure up. Somewhere around there looks pretty good. Now, what I really want to tell you about is contrast. So the way I adjusted contrast for this image was switch to black and white. I'll sometimes do this because I find in some cases it's easier to see the contrast in black and white than it is in color. So looking at this image, yeah, there's some color here, but there's a lot of blue tone in this, and even the cliffs have a blue cast to them. So switching over to black and white, I can start to play with the contrast slider, and I want those cliffs to pop. And it's very easy to just looking at black and white to see when the contrast is looking good. So somewhere around there. And then from here, I went back to color mode. You also notice the blues are much richer now in the ocean, and did a few more fiddling with highlights and shadows. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know how those go. So let me click on that, and there we go. So you can see I brought the shadows up, actually opening up the shadows in the rocks, and set the white point. So there's just the sky is just being backed off from white. I didn't do anything with presence. Here, actually, did I do anything with presence? Oh, I did. Look at that. Got one more snapshot. I did bring up things further, so let's undo that for a moment so you can see here's where things were with our tone, and then adding the presence in. This was for the image overall, so there's no brushing here. Added some crispness to the cliffs, a little more richness in color, the vibrance and the saturation for the ocean and for the sky. I didn't want to push things too far in clarity because this is affecting the image as a whole. I don't want the ocean or the sky to get any sharper. I will do some work on the cliffs, but we'll do that over and on one. That's also a reason I didn't change anything in the detail panel. That would affect the image overall. And again, I know I could brush in some detail using one of the brushes here in Lightroom, but I'm already going into On1 to deal with some cleanup work. And I love dynamic contrast in On1 effects. So let's just pop on over into the On1 suite and continue this image. So in Perfect Layers, the only thing I did was using the retouching tools to take care of getting rid of this ship, getting rid of this bulldozer, and some very slight cleanup in the areas along here. There were some power lines. If I were to zoom in, let's go ahead and do that. Right up in here, you can see a couple little power lines going through there, and just got rid of those, and then this tower didn't look all that great. So here's the final product. I'll re-enable that, and you're going to see the big noticeable differences. There's no ship, there's no tower. End up cleaning up this beach entirely, and toggling that off again. This darker sand, I tried keeping it originally, but in the end I liked just a nice bit of smooth sand, and so I felt comfortable enough taking this bulldozer out and just smoothing that sand over. How I did that was primarily with some clone tool work along the edge, and then the center of it was the Perfect Eraser and then the retouch brush to smooth things out. I've got a full video course on retouching landscapes and removing distractions from photos. You can check that out on my website if you want to get a really deep dive on it. So here's the final image. Let's pop over into effects. That's where I'm going to show you the stylization of this image. The enhance change, one minor post-stylization retouching thing. We're not going to go through that in the video. We're going to focus on effects here because that's where all of the magic really happens, going from here to here. So let me launch this into effects and walk through the filters we applied. In effect, what I want to accomplish here is to bring up the detail in the cliffs, maybe add a little bit of warmth, and maybe accentuate these blues a little bit more. And finish things off with a vignette. And so I added a few filters to accomplish that and started with the tone enhancer. So I'm going to click on that one, and we can see immediately that the cliffs are popping out. And primarily what I did there was increased the shadows a little bit to get a little more showing in the base of these cliffs where those were very dark before. Really pumped up detail. But then the big thing here is the mask. You can see in the filter stack, this is masked. I do a Control M. This is masked away from most things. Actually, I had a little cleanup to do right there, so I'll take care of that right now. How I had done the masking was just use the quick brush and just drag it all the way through the sky. And X key to put that to paint in. Just kind of bring the detail back into that foreground rock. There we go. All right. And that was really it for the tone enhancer. Now I copied that mask, and since I made a modification, let's go ahead and copy that mask again. And then did dynamic contrast. Turn off the mask here, and I will repaste that mask. So I'm also applying dynamic contrast to just the cliff and the rocks itself in this little patch of beach. I really want to keep this water nice and smooth and keep the sky nice and smooth. Those are not the focus of this shot. That's the context for my subject. Now to add a little warmth, this is where sunshine comes in. And so you can see it brightens up just a little bit. You can see the amount slider's been moved up, and saturation ever so slightly increased. And that just adds, well, like the filter suggests, it adds the look of if more sunlight were shining on this scene. If you saw the in the field video, you saw it was a very overcast day. You can see there's quite a bit of cloud cover here. And this was just enough of a touch to bring in the warmth and these oranges and yellows in the cliff. And finally, I should point out too that I'm really lowering the layer opacity on this sunshine. I mean, here's what it looks like. It's overpowering here. The glow is too much. It just looks false. So I lowered that opacity down to 35. There's nothing special about the 35 number. It was just me manipulating the slider and watching what it did in the preview screen until I got it to where I was happy with the result. And now finally is the vignette. And if you have watched other videos, you know how I do vignettes. I will bring the feather all the way down to 0, change the size and the roundness to position the vignette where I want it. I do want a nice, amount of the edges being darkened. My brightness is all the way down. Once I've got that positioned, pop the feather all the way back up so it has a nice smooth fade. So here's before, and here's after. So the tip of the week is to apply contrast or any type of effect that's going to punch up the sharpness of your image to selected areas. You don't have to treat all areas of your photo the same. Punch up your subject more, but keep other parts soft, using that to help visually guide the viewer to what you want them to look at. So after I'd done the initial contrast boost in Lightroom, I still wanted more on the cliffs. Now you might ask yourself, well, couldn't you have done that with filter brushes or the detail pane? And I could have. Detail would have affected the whole image. I could have done something with filter brushes, but there was some retouching work that I prefer the tools in On1 for. I think they're stronger for the type of retouching I needed to do than what Lightroom has. And so once I'm in there, I also really love dynamic contrast, and I love the effects module. And so I'm going to use the tools that are going to get me to my final image faster. If you've watched this show before, you've heard me say that before. So there's no right or wrong. If you like using the Lightroom filter brushes, then filter brushes, well, just the brushes. Go ahead and do it. It's really a matter of what's going to get you to your end photo. But the tip here is specifically about contrast. You don't have to apply contrast universally across your image. That's it for this week in post. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and tell a friend. I'd love to see the audience growing. That really encourages me to come back and do episode after episode. And if you have a question, I would love to hear from you. Please ask your questions. I do my very best to answer each and every one of them. And they also make me think about my photography, so you're helping me out in the sense you're making me a better photographer by asking a question and just making me think, yeah, why do I do what I just did? And then hopefully my answers will help you out and we both get better together. So until next time, happy shooting. My name's Scott Davenport.